Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, we have offer sheet news. And on top of that, we have a player that doesn't want to be where they are right now. I mean, it's August 19th, and we have some breaking news here. This is cool. This is fun.
I think it's very funny that Stan Bowman very clearly was like, I'll figure it out by the weekend last week with the offer sheets. And then it was like 10 o'clock on Sunday night. He's like, damn, that deadline's on Tuesday. I should get going on that. Because obviously the trade comes together over the course of a few days, few hours. That wasn't agreed to at 11 o'clock Sunday night. But the optics of agreeing to a trade at 11 o'clock on a Sunday are genuinely funny, especially in the contrast of nothing going on in the entire summer. But this is so pressing, it needs to get done at 11 o'clock. Starting with that, with the offer sheets, the Oilers put a lot of chips in. They made themselves susceptible to this offer sheet situation in going out and getting Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson. If they had opted to stay cheap, to keep Ryan McLeod, to keep Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, all three of those guys, they could have done that no problem if they didn't sign Skinner and Arvidsson. But they thought, well, this is our last chance because Draisaitl's going to go from 8.5 to probably 13 million.
Yeah.
And McDavid is 2 years away from going where he's at to probably 15 or 16 million. So this is our last chance with this core, as cheap as it's going to be. You have McDavid and Draisaitl combined for like 20 million. 2 or 3 years from now, they're probably going to combine for like 30 million. So going in on Skinner, going in on Arvidsson, it makes sense in a vacuum, but it made you susceptible to an offer sheet. And now you're basically saying we're going to outscore all of our issues because you look at that defense, even if they do match on Broberg, which it seems like they're going to do based on trading Cody Ceci, you're going into next year, Ekholm, Bouchard, great. Arguably the best first pair in the entire National Hockey League. Once you get past that, it is a lot of question marks and it is a lot of uncertainty. You're looking at Nurse and Broberg, who has less than 90 career NHL games. Broberg playing on his offside as a 22-year-old, with Nurse, who is a net liability. And then your third pair is Brett Kulak.
An expensive one of that.
Brett Kulak. Darnell Nurse is the fourth highest paid defenseman in the entire league. We'll talk about that at some point, I'm sure. But the one last thing I wanted to get in on that before we shift it over to Askarov, just you're going into next year, and then your third pair is going to be Kulak and then Ty Emberson or Troy Stetcher or Joshua Brown. And that's going to be the defense that's going to win the Stanley Cup. They put all of their eggs in, we're going to outscore our problems. And when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson and Zach Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, you can say that's a decent plan. But when you get to a conference final, a Stanley Cup final, there's not a lot of room out there. You just watch this play out in real time that we had too much speed. We weren't able to cycle enough. We weren't able to work for our offense enough, and we couldn't do it. And I get what they're trying to do. If they're able to make the Broberg thing work, if they do the Evander Kane LTIR gymnastics, I'm sure this is all going to make sense once it's all ironed out by Tuesday, tomorrow. But they have staked a lot on this season.
This blue line, here's the thing. You know, you can have McDavid, you could have Draisaitl, and we saw the success the Oilers had this season, despite even last year not having the greatest blue line in the world. But you're here to suggest that this 6 deep core that you have now is good enough to take you back there as it currently stands. It just doesn't. First of all, it doesn't scare me at all. Second of all, like, this is the kind of blue line that teams are hungry to see. Like, I understand, you know, Bouchard and Ekholm are really good at the sport. That's great, but at the end of the day, they can't play 60 minutes. Other defensemen have to be on the ice too. The problem is that the Oilers don't really have another really steady defenseman that they can reliably play for 20, 22 minutes a night if they need to. Okay, let's say, hopefully this doesn't happen, obviously, but like, let's say Ekholm goes down or Bouchard goes down. Who's playing up there? Who?
I will say most teams don't have that level of depth. Most teams can't replace their best defenseman if they get hurt, to be fair.
Sure, but there are teams that are set up in such a way that they have utility players that can plug the hole while there is one. You wouldn't want somebody there long term, but in the meanwhile, while you kind of sit there and wait there are certain teams in the league that can have those kinds of players that, okay, well, all right, you're going to get top 2 minutes and, we can hold on while you play top 2 minutes. The Oilers do not have that.
No.
So while they objectively got better after trading away Cody Ceci, and the fact that it only took a 3rd round pick to get that done, and Ty Emberson, who,
maybe
is
useful.
A player. Like, he's not a bad player. He can definitely play 60 for the Oilers right now. He's going to compete for that role in training camp, but he's definitely not just a guy. Like, they got, a decent return for objectively one of the worst defensemen in the league and only a 3rd round pick. So it's not bad for Edmonton. Like, that trade was great for them, A+ for them. Mike Greer, I kind of don't know I don't know what that trade was all about. I understand that you worked under Bowman and he's your friend, but at a certain point, you're also a general manager. You have to remember that you also have to make your team the best team you could be, and only getting a 3rd and also giving up Ty Emerson to get Cody Ceci was definitely a decision. I'll give you that. It was one of the decisions of all time. And for the Oilers, that trade definitely makes them better, but do they have the money? Do they still want to get both players in return? Because they also got Vasily Podkolzin from Vancouver. Like, they're making a lot of moves, and now we'll see in the next 24 hours or so what the ultimate goal for Edmonton is after all the dust has settled.
Anecdotally, it feels like Podkolzin's your Holloway replacement. At least that's what it seems like. Obviously, if they can convince Evander Kane to get surgery and basically sit out the regular season, it doesn't matter. They can have all 3 of them if they really wanted to. If Evander Kane's willing to sit out, and Evander Kane hasn't always been the most team-friendly guy. He hasn't always been willing to do what's best for the team. So I struggle to imagine they're going to convince a guy who has spent the last 3.5 months rehabbing and going through physical therapy. Hey, we know you just did all that, but we need you to get surgery and sit out so we can be cap compliant. Because there is a world where even if he does get surgery, that's not a 7-month injury. Reportedly he needs hip surgery. That's a 4 or 5 month recovery. If he goes to get that next week or as soon as training camp starts, when you need to start having your ducks in a row, you're talking October, November, December, January, at the longest February if he gets surgery in October. And then he comes back in February, you're going to be in a situation like Vegas was when Jack Eichel first got out there, where to be cap compliant, you can only dress 16 guys, or like the Rangers were when they were trying to acquire Patrick Laine. That's a real down the road. This might come back into play. So it's not just, as soon as we get Evander Kane to go on LTIR, we're good. LTIR, we're good. It's, we need to get him on LTIR. We need to still present this as we're not trying to circumvent the cap. I almost said circumnavigate. The cap isn't spherical. You don't circumnavigate it. But you got all of these moving parts. And it feels very much so like the Oilers went into this offseason with the mindset of, we're coming off a Stanley Cup. We're very close. We're about to lock up Draisaitl and McDavid for the rest of their NHL careers. We have to push as many chips as we can in to go in on these guys without a real thought for the consequences. I think adding Skinner and Arvidsson makes them better as the replacements for Ryan McLeod and whichever other forward you want to draw out of there, Warren Fogle, whomstever. It makes them better, but it also makes them a little more offense first. Neither of those guys is particularly proficient defensively.
Jeff Skinner will never backcheck.
No, he won't.
That's just not going to happen.
And look, he's probably going to put up a nice counting stat season. He's going to ride shotgun with Draisaitl or McDavid. He's going to have 25, 30 goals on his contract. It's going to look like a steal. But when you get to the playoffs and there's less room, you're playing better opponents who play better defense, those type of guys have a hard time generating offense consistently. So staking a lot on offense. And look, I am a strong advocate. You want to always be focused on offense. You can't win a game 0-0, but you do need to have multiple forms of scoring. And right now, it does kind of feel like the Oilers are a bit one-dimensional in how they create their offense. Of course, they have 2 of the 5 best players in the world in generating that offense, but there are limits to what 2 guys can do.
Well, yeah. I mean, we talked about this a second ago, but they're on the ice a lot, right? I mean, when you have 2 of the best players in the world, you want to put them on the ice as much as you can, but they're also not playing 60 minutes. Also, they can't play defense at the same time. Like, while you can't, and I think for the most part, I agree with you where, you can't win a game 0-0 and offense is ultimately more important. You still want to have somebody there that can do the job defensively if needed. And the problem is that, okay, well, when you have somebody like Jeff Skinner in your top six, on top of having the kind of not splendid blue line the Oilers have, that becomes a bigger problem. Because if you have, obviously your top six forwards are going to be on the ice most of the time. That's how hockey works. Your best players get more ice time. So when you have somebody like Jeff Skinner, who's in your top six forward group, a guy who's, he's gifted offensively, but my man's will never defend ever. Like he just won't do it. Maybe Edmonton could try to get him to do it sometimes. And I'm not saying he should stop playing offense and focus on defense. But what I'm saying to you, if Jeff Skinner lost the puck and he has to back check, he should do that as opposed to not doing that, which is what he currently has done for the past few years. So when somebody of that caliber is in your top six, that means that you need to have somebody on the blue line that is there to essentially back him up, to cover for him. When that happens, because obviously no one is always perfect with the puck. Always, there's going to be mistakes. When Jeff Skinner has a mistake, either in the neutral zone or trying to get the puck in the offensive zone, the puck goes the other way. There's got to be someone to cover for him. There's got to be somebody on that blue line that can step up and take away the space that Jeff Skinner gave up with that kind of offensive mistake. The Oilers right now have two. Maybe they have three players that can do that for him, but they don't have six. And is your 6D going to be able to cover for a lot of these issues a lot of the time? Maybe not. But only having two, maybe three, is going to highlight the defensive deficiencies of this team even more so than we are just looking at them on paper.
The other thing about it, when you're talking about the Oilers, is they're very much in the new school where the best defense is not playing defense at all, which is really effective most of the time when you have genuine superstars like McDavid and like Draisaitl. But that was how teams made them sweat in the playoffs. Make McDavid play defense for his entire shift, make Draisaitl play defense for his entire shift, and you can really that's the way you hem them. That's the way you stop them. Don't even let them get to offense. The Canucks did a great job of that. I want to say, through the first 5 games, the goal differential, the Canucks scored 5 goals and the Oilers scored 2 goals with Draisaitl on the ice. You make Leon play defense, he can't burn you. And the one last thing I want to get in before we talk about Askarov, I did an entire episode of Locked On Oilers about Broberg that's going to come out tomorrow, but these are the stats for him with Darnell Nurse in the playoffs. They played 76 minutes together in the postseason. They had a 7-2 goals for versus against split. All of that is in spite of the underlying results. Scoring chances, they generated 49. They conceded 95. Expected goals, they generated 2.11. They conceded 4.87. High danger, they generated 9. They conceded 18. Yikes. 17% shooting percentage, 947 save percentage. The Oilers are staking a lot on a pair that look to have gotten very, very lucky as opposed to genuinely creating results.
How much of that is on Broberg's inexperience, I should say, versus Darnell Nurse's inability to
I think it's both. I think it's both. You're asking a 22-year-old with less than 100 NHL games to play on his offside with a defenseman who can't move the puck. It's a real conundrum. That Nurse contract is one of the worst in the entire National Hockey League. It was awful the moment it was signed, and it's the Stan Bowman effect down the road. Him giving Seth Jones that enormous contract in 2021 is part of the reason the Oilers are paying Darnell Nurse this much. And the defenseman market is all out of whack because you had a handful of guys get paid right before the pandemic. Drew Doughty and Erik Karlsson, they're both clearing $11 million per year. Those contracts are 2018 and 2019. Trouba is in 2019 where he gets $8 per year. So the starting price for a first pair defenseman, not even a great offensive one. Trouba was coming off, I think, 50 points that last season in Winnipeg. Yep. 50 points was $8 million, and that was 5 years ago. Going into that pandemic, the assumption was the revenues would keep going up, the cap would keep going up, the price for a first pair defenseman would keep going up. All of this is against the backdrop of the fact that the Oilers are probably going to have to bridge Evan Bouchard next summer, or they're going to.
I don't even think it's a probably. I think they will.
They kind of have to. They kind of have to. They've boxed themselves into a corner as far as money. All right, let's do Askarov. I feel like this was obvious. I feel like he's been marinating way too long in the AHL, where I understand with goalies in particular, you really want to give them as much run as possible to build them up before you give them a chance. But I don't know how you were going to sell Askarov on, all right, this is your 4th year in North America. You're going to get 25 starts behind a guy who's a Vezina candidate. I know they did this with UC Saros behind Pekka Rinne,
right?
But you can't assume that everybody's going to be on the same page. At some point, Askarov was going to do what was best for him.
Also, Rinne was older.
That's also very true. Rinne was close to the end of his career when Saros...
Like the light at the end of the tunnel for Saros was there.
Yeah.
As Rinne... Because when Saros came over, Rinne was already kind of old. And then, the argument was for Rinne, for Saros was Rinne is going to retire soon, and this is going to be your team soon.
Yeah. Same thing with Ben Bishop and Vasilevsky as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about, the situation in Nashville now is not only is Rinne, Saros not going anywhere, my man's got a lot, essentially a lifetime extension in Nashville. So for Askarov, this is the only choice at this point. When you are as touted of a prospect as you have been, essentially since you got to North American soil, everyone has been under the impression, and by all accounts, he's been playing really well in the AHL as well. I unfortunately haven't been watching a whole lot of Milwaukee Admirals AHL games, so I can't tell you off top of my head how well he's looked. But by all accounts, by people that know Askarov's play a lot better than I do, he's looked really good. So he's ready for NHL action, and it is not surprising to me at all that he's going to not report to the AHL. He's done. He's done his job of waiting and waiting and waiting. He's played 3 years there, and now it's okay. Well, if he keeps staying there, or if he's Zararis' backup, what was the purpose of waiting for? The whole point was for him to get a starter role, or at least maybe do 1A, 1B with Zararis and split 40 games, or do one or the other, but not sit there on the bench for 60 games and continue to watch Zararis play. That's not from Nashville's perspective. Sure, it'd be terrific to have both goalies, absolutely. But from Askarov's perspective, I totally get it. He doesn't want to do this, and he wants it to be a starter role. So it'll be very interesting to see, what teams are interested in him. Obviously, he's going to get traded. There's no way he stays in Milwaukee or just kind of stays in limbo while Nashville figures this out. He's going to get traded, and it's going to be interesting. I would have to imagine Nashville wants to trade him to an Eastern Conference team. I don't think Barry Trotz wants to keep him within the conference, especially within the division, because he knows a lot better than everybody else does how good he is as a goalie. So he's probably going to go to an Eastern Conference team, and that, ultimately does hurt the Rangers.
One thing I wanted to build off of this, and it's not just goalies, but I do think it really happens to goalies in particular. The comparison I would make to keeping Askarov in the AHL for another year would be like asking somebody to do first grade a second time. Like, if you did everything you were supposed to do in first grade, you passed the state tests, you got good grades, and then they said, well, you got to do it again because we don't have enough seats for you we don't have a seat for you in second grade. That's what you're doing at this point.
They're transferring school districts. Like they're not staying there.
That's kind of how I look at teams that over marinate guys in the AHL. This is a thing that Ken Holland did a lot in Detroit, did in Edmonton. You go and look. The last first round pick the Oilers drafted to play in the NHL was Broberg, and that was 2019. They have not had a first round pick play in the NHL since the one they took 5 years ago. That type of slow roll, eventually you reach a breaking point with these young guys where they feel like they are wasting their time. And you can do all the quality control in the world in the AHL. You can have the veterans. You can spend the money to have the quality career AHL guys. I forget what the rules are. You can only have X number of guys over a certain age, but you can invest in those guys. You can have a quality AHL operation like what the Crunch were. All those years, the Lightning were churning guys out. But eventually, if you can't graduate them up to the NHL, you need to turn them into assets. And it feels like negligence that the Predators waited this long where they agreed to the deal with Saros. If they were still kind of in a we're not sure what we're gonna do situation.
What did they think was going to happen?
Exactly. I don't want to say it's hubris, but that's kind of what it feels like. They thought they could have both, you know. And maybe there's a world where you could have convinced Askarov, hey, we're going to do 50-30. We're going to have the best goalie tandem in the league. We've spent all this money on Stamkos and Marcia, so we're going to take a step forward. We think we can be better than Winnipeg this year. We think we're better than the Wild. We're going to be in contention with Colorado and Dallas to be the best team in our division, maybe the best team in the West. But Askarov's got to look out for himself, man.
Absolutely.
At a certain point, and it's the same thing with Holloway and Broberg. At a certain point, you need opportunities because you can be, if you're 24, 25 years old and you have 0 career NHL games, how are you supposed to bargain for yourself as an unrestricted or restricted free agent 2 or 3 years from now? And that's part of the conundrum here. Askarov has already been in North America for a few seasons now. He has no leverage in a contract negotiation to say, I think I am worth this amount of money. All he has is the AHL experience, which the Predators are going to knock back on. Well, you haven't done it in the NHL, so even when he's arbitration eligible, he's going to sit down at a table and the arbitrator's going to say, you have 30 career NHL starts on a decent team. I don't know how good you are. I'm going to defer to the team's evaluation of you. That's why, and I don't want to get up on my soapbox here, but that's why this contract structure in the NHL is so bad for the players. Unless you are the blue chip of blue chip, you know, you're the Cale Makar type who's picked 4th overall, you kill it on your entry-level deal. Unless you're that guy, you really get the shaft as far as getting money.
I think a surprise team that could really enter the sweepstakes for Askarov is Carolina.
I've seen that. Yeah.
I think Freddie Anderson is just too injury prone to be a reliable starting goaltender, and Kochetkov is kind of hot and cold.
Yeah.
And we saw it, you know, throughout last year as well, where he's had moments, he's had games where he's looked really good, and then there's been other games where you look at him and you're like, that went in?
Yeah.
That shot goes in, and then he's at a position. I think Carolina, especially now with a new GM, with a new direction, this new GM, I mean, yeah, I'm sure he was in the room for conversations prior to this season, but now he's in charge. He's not necessarily attached to anybody on this team right now. Maybe some of these guys that just came in, or, you know, I ultimately Carolina, I think, is going to make a big push for Askarov. I think he is the kind of player that would really transform Carolina into a team that's good, you know, another second round exit on the way. Because, like, here's the thing. If they had Askarov in that second round series against the Rangers, do they, because you take a look at game 6, right? Freddie Anderson had a miserable game. I still
don't know how that first goal goes. I don't know how you end up on your back when the puck's at the circle.
And it's tough to blame Freddie Anderson for, like, you know,
it happens. That's hockey.
There's a chip in the ice and you fall, or you just kind of fall. Like, it happens, and these things, you know, it's hockey, it's luck based, and situations like that happen from time to time. But at the end of the day, he had a miserable game 6, and I would have to imagine that Carolina is looking at this like, oh, there's a starting goaltender, a prime time guy that's been marinating in the NHL for a few years, and he's looked excellent in the AHL, and he's looking to get out of his current position. And we have, if Askarov could immediately become our number 1 goalie. Oh, and also, let's say they trade Anderson to keep Kochetkov. Well, then there's 2 goalies that both speak Russian on the same team. Oh, it could take, I don't know, first round pick and insert more picks and prospects.
I have no idea what goalies.
I have no idea.
Goalie market's impossible to predict.
Especially now that Askarov has publicly asked out.
Yeah.
I would have to imagine that the price isn't going to be as high as Barry Trotz wants it to be. But I would have to think that Carolina becomes an appealing market for Askarov because of what's to come his way if he goes there.
So I want to build off of that before we pivot to the main topic of today's episode. The one caveat I would say, and the one reason I don't think Carolina makes as much sense as it seems, I don't know if a team like Carolina that very clearly fancies itself as a Stanley Cup contender is going to be willing to take the lumps that come with the guy's first NHL run. That's the one pushback I have on that. I do think there will be a market. I think if you are a team that's kind of in that ascending window, in a vacuum, you would say a team like Buffalo. Buffalo's got 2 goalies, they're set. But
Sure.
the Flyers, the Blue Jackets, teams that are on the periphery, they've spent a little money, they have a few nice pieces and need goalies. I do think there is a world where it makes sense for that type of team. And one thing I wanted to get in here, I saw this tweet earlier today, and I do think it's worth talking about. And this is the Hockey News' top goalie prospects from the last 15 years. So generally speaking, the guys on this list have pretty much all become NHL starters. Not all of them have been good, but only a handful didn't end up making it. You go all the way back to 2005. Kari Lehtinen, Marc-Andre Fleury, Ryan Miller, long NHL careers for all 3. The year after, Carey Price, in addition to Fleury, Al Montoya, backup goalie, but NHL goalie. Price, Rask, Leland Irving didn't make it, but the first 2 do. Price, Bernier, Tuukka Rask, they all make it. Rask, Varlamov, Markstrom, they all make it. Markstrom, Bernier, Corey Schneider, all NHL starters. Markstrom, Jack Campbell, Jake Allen. Campbell, Jake Allen is an NHL starter. Markstrom is. Markstrom, Lehner, Matt Hackett. I have no idea who Matt Hackett is, but the first 2 make it.
He was a Sabres legend, Matt Hackett.
Gibson, Lehner, Vasilevsky, all make it. Gibson, Vasilevsky, Jake Allen, all make it. Vasilevsky, Zach Fucale, Malcolm Subban. That's the weakest year on this entire sheet. Only one of those guys really makes it. The year after, Samsonov, Demko, John Gillies. 2 of those 3 are NHL starters. Gillies, he's floating around. He might be a backup. Samsonov, Tyler Parsons doesn't make it. John Gillies is floated around. Samsonov, Carter Hart, obviously not in the NHL. And then Demko, the year after, Pekka Luukkonen, Samsonov, Demko. The point being, if you're on that list for a multi-year period, you're at least an NHL goalie. You will hang around and you will be a guy. Whether or not you're a starter, there are weak links on that list like Samsonov, Malcolm Subban, John Gillies, etc. But this is a guy worth taking a chance on, especially
Absolutely.
if you're a team that's got room, And what I mean by that is if you're a team like Philly, who's got a year or 2 to play with in your window, if you're the Blue Jackets, who've got a year or 2 to play with in your window, hell, if Detroit didn't piss away all their money in free agency, this is the type of guy you take a swing on.
I was going to say, it would be hilarious after Detroit signs 19 goalies if they now suddenly trade 18 of them for Askarov.
That's why it's always better to be liquid in the NHL. You can talk yourself into anything the first day of free agency. It's like grocery shopping hungry. Don't do it because you're going to buy a bunch of shit you're not going to eat. When you're the Red Wings, instead of throwing all of this money at guys who are meh, wait for that opportunity to pounce. That is the universal language of sport right now. In the NFL, you wait for the next disgruntled quarterback. You wait for Kyler Murray to say, I don't want to be in Arizona anymore. And you have 50 million sitting there to go get Kyler Murray. In basketball, you keep that one spot open to have a third supermax. In the NHL, you need to keep that 7 to 10 million open for the opportunity that a star becomes available. If you are spending to the cap as a bubble team, you're not doing your job as a general manager.
And now it's a double-edged sword with Detroit because you can't bank on somebody like Askarov becoming available. At the same time, I feel like this was very predictable.
Oh, I don't even mean just Askarov. I just mean a quality player.
For sure. But the way that Detroit went about this free agency, signing like 7 goalies and, they signed a lot of guys for some reason. Like they literally have like 4 or 5 NHL goalies on their roster, which doesn't make any sense to me. But I don't know why they did that, but I think this Askarov situation as a whole was very predictable. And I think a team like Carolina will step in and make that big splash. And then that'll be their quote unquote free agency banger of the summer, because, especially because they lost Gensel. Their team probably isn't as good overall as it was a year ago. So they lose Shea as well. So now this is your chance to be like, okay, wait, hold on. We lost those guys, but we're going to have this guy in our net. And that would quell a lot of the questions surrounding this team, because again, the questions year after year is, can Kochetkov be a true starter, and can Freddie Anderson stay healthy? For right now, the answer is still no to both of these. So Carolina makes sense from that perspective. Whether
Carolina's also always been unwilling to invest in goalie. They overthink it, where they try and I don't want to call it they moneyball it, but they try and moneyball goalie. They think if they have a good enough team in front of the goalie, it doesn't matter all that much.
I think Eric Tulsky is the exact kind of GM
we'll see
that will make this kind of trade. Obviously, we don't know whether it will or not, but I think this is the kind of, he's the analytics guy. He's the homegrown talent that Carolina has been touting for a while. If anybody working in Carolina is going to make this trade, it's Tulsky. So I think that's just a perfect match, but we'll see what happens.
All right, let's talk about the main subject of today. We are unfortunately, we're losing an institution, and that's the way I think about it. The Yankees, John Sterling finally retired after 40-something years of doing the Yankees on the radio. We're going to get one last year of Sam Rosen on MSG Network, and it just feels like, I hate to make a joke of the situation, it feels like we're losing recipes, man. It feels like we are losing part of the DNA of what makes the team the team. Yeah. And I always talk about this when I talk about the Mets and the relationship to the Yankees. The Yankees inundate you with history, tradition. We are unlike anyone else. Part of that is recognizing that you have extraordinary players and making it feel significant when you get this opportunity. There are a lot of people out there in the world who don't know what the Rangers sound like without Sam calling them on TV. They have spent their entire life. There are people in their early 40s right now who is this guy calling the Rangers back in 1984 or 5? And that has been their entire life.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few organic things left in professional sports. These holdovers, these guys who have been in the same role forever because they genuinely love it. And you look at the disarray out there in sports media right now, where networks are constantly cycling through play-by-play guys and color guys because they're just trying to find anything that connects with the audience. It is implied that when you turn MSG on, you're going to hear Sam's voice. And depending how old you are, you might say Sam and JD, Sam and Micheletti, etc. But you have spent...
I remember when Joe Micheletti used to be the Islanders.
Yeah, when it was him and Howie Rose calling the Islanders on MSG. Yeah.
I miss Howie calling games.
Howie's great.
So good at it. Really good at it.
Howie's still doing the Mets, but that's the type of guy that's...
Not just, by the way, Brendan Burke, fantastic.
Tremendous.
Fantastic. I'm not saying anything about Brendan. Brendan Burke is tremendous.
Yeah.
And him calling games is a treat, especially when he does national games.
Yeah.
I love listening to Brendan Burke call national games. Howie Rose was really good. And I miss Howie Rose calling hockey games. That's all I'm saying.
Are losing that type of cultural figure. There are not a lot of genuine authorities in any profession anymore. I think about the way that when I was in journalism school, the professors talk about Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow, and it's the same kind of thing. You think about, you don't even know who hosts the nightly news on any of the big networks anymore. I think it's Lester Holt on NBC, but I couldn't tell you the other networks. That's the thing. You are losing tradition. You are losing cachet and credibility. No matter who takes this job after Sam, you're never going to be Sam. You are going to always have to try and forge your own path and be different. Whether it's Kenny Albert, whether it's somebody entirely out of left field, it feels like you are losing something, and you are losing an essential component of what makes the Rangers if Sam isn't going to be the voice you hear.
Could it be LaGreca?
I don't think so. I think Don likes his ESPN gig. I think he's also too old. I think if you're going to do this, I think you want to get somebody who can do this for 20 years. I think that's the ideal outcome when you're trying to build this out. And MSG has taken some chances the last few years, bringing in Valaket, bringing in Hank, Brian Boyle, Rupp. They've been very carefully, and networks do this all the time. The Mets have been doing this with Daniel Murphy and Jerry Blevins. They're trying to get an idea of who's in the bullpen that down the road, when it's time to replace some of these older guys, who's going to be in the mix. And I could see a world where it's Boyle or it's Rupp or one of those tangential guys. It won't be Hank. Hank does too many things.
I do think when Micheletti chooses to retire, which could be after next season, obviously we have no idea.
Yeah.
But there is a world in which if Sam goes, so does Joe. We have no idea. Maybe that's what Joe wants. I would have to imagine that Sam and Joe have been on the phone texting each other. I'm sure Joe has known about this
Yeah.
for a lot longer than we have. So maybe that's on the table. Maybe Sam and Joe are a package deal. And when Sam
You think they
retired,
do parties? Can we book them to do a party if they're a package
that'd be
deal?
great. That'd be great. That'd be really cool. Maybe if we can set up a cameo for them, maybe we can ask them for it. But maybe they're a package deal. And when Sam retires, and so does Joe, and now they have to fill both seats. And maybe it's Valaket, who's been tremendous.
I think Valaket would do a decent job on color. It's just a matter of if he wants to do it or not. That's the biggest thing.
I mean, Valley has been fantastic on the desk. The stats that he brings to the table, the angles that he brings. I learned a lot listening to him and watching the way that he breaks the game down. And
breaking news.
We do have breaking news.
Patrick Laine to the Canadiens.
To the Canadiens.
Yeah.
All right.
I like it. Yeah. I like it. That's the type of Montreal is a team. Yeah. Take a swing. They have goalies in the mix, so I didn't say them for Askarov, but that's the type of team. You got Slavkovsky, you got Suzuki, you got Caulfield, but other than that, all your good prospects are defensemen. You drop Laine in there and he clicks, great. If not, it doesn't really matter because you're not expected to win yet.
It's really funny because I don't mean to cut you off, but it's really funny that Elliot Friedman's like, hearing today is going to be a trade for Patrick Laine, and then the quote tweet from our friend Ryan Mead at Blue Shirts Breakaway is the translation that the deal is done. The team account will tweet in a few moments.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's like because the team accounts, the graphic designers know more information than these guys do. But yeah, I mean, you said it. I think if there is a team that needed to make this kind of trade, it is Montreal. They are a team that has been on the up and up. They've been really kind of focusing on their inner talent of developing Caulfield and Slavkovsky and all these guys. And Patrick Laine is the kind of guy who really needs to kind of get his career back on track a little bit. Yeah, and I'm obviously not referring to
he just needs an opportunity. That's the biggest thing.
Yes. And I'm obviously not referring to the way that last season ended with him going the player assistance program. Like, that's a complete aside. He has not gelled well in Winnipeg, hasn't gelled well in Columbus. Like, he needs a place where he can come in and do what is expected of him and grow along with the rest of the team. And
he's not even that old.
No, he's not.
He's been around
a while. 25? He's 25,
I think
maybe?
He's 25. I think he's 25.
Yeah, but it feels like he's been in the league.
Because he's been in the league since he was 18. Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
And
he's 26.
I think this is a great opportunity for him to learn. And also, when you have Marty St. Louis coaching you, he's like, I think
he'll build you up.
I think MSL is really going to make Laine, I don't want to say grow up. I don't want to imply
give him the tools to help himself. Yes, that's the way I think about it.
I don't want to imply that Laine is immature. Like, I don't want to imply anything, but I think MSL is really going to make Laine grow into a better leader on the ice and off the ice. I think this is a great fit. Obviously, we'll see what the rest of the deal looks like, but off the rip, first impressions, this is great for Laine specifically.
You need an opportunity. Marty's done a really good job up there of building those guys up because he knew it was an uphill battle. The minute he took that job, he knew it was going to be 2 or 3 years of getting your teeth kicked in. That was an untalented roster, bloated contracts for aging veterans, not a lot of guys immediately in the pipeline. They knew it was going to be a multi-year thing, and he's fostered a very healthy environment that I do think will enable young guys that come through there to have the tools to help themselves. And that's the way I think about it for guys like this who have bounced around a lot of different places, have struggled to really find their footing as a professional. You just need the right opportunity and the right coach to connect with you. I think that's something we don't really get a lot we don't really talk about a lot, because in hockey, if you're a guy like that who's picked that high, you'll hang around forever. Guys like Drouin, guys like Galchenyuk, teams will keep giving you opportunities. It is simply a matter of, are you going to end up in an environment where you're going to feel okay and you're going to have a coach who's willing to go to bat for you? And we can testify to this. You look at the difference in Lafreniere last 2 years ago versus this past season. He had a coach that genuinely believed in him and said, you're going to figure this out. I know how good you are. And you saw the results transform over the course of a season. Not everybody does figure it out, but there are some coaches who just have that gift where they're able to connect, they're able to communicate, and they get guys to buy in. You think about, and this is a football comparison, but you think about Geno Smith leaving the Jets, going to the Seahawks, winning that job, making the Pro Bowl, and getting that life-changing contract, all because Pete Carroll was willing to take a chance on him. That's the type of leadership you really need in today's game, because every player is different. You can't have a monolith, this is how I coach, because every single guy has a different background. They've been coached differently their entire lives. They have always been the best player on their team up till they were like 19 or 20 years old. You know, it's probably hard for Patrick Laine to grapple with, I'm 26 years old. I still don't really know who I am as a hockey player.
Yeah.
I've had a few chances. I haven't been at my best. The team hasn't really put me in a position to succeed. The human element is really difficult to manage, and you just want this to work out. You know, rookie and sophomore Laine, one of the most impressive players I've ever seen. That 40-something goal season he had as a 19-year-old, he was incredible. One of the driving forces of that Jets team that went to the conference finals and lost to Vegas in the first year of Vegas's existence. You hope for the best.
That was Winnipeg's year, man. They were so good.
I think that's the best team in the last 15 years to not win the Stanley Cup, that 2018 Jets team. It was incredible. Laine was out of his mind. You know, there's no other way to say it. You're scoring 43 goals as a teenager. That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't. And that was 5 years ago. It's not like now where it's a little bit easier to score. It's really crazy to think about how long he's been in the league and where we're at. I hope it works. I really do hope it works out.
I hope for his success. Obviously, we don't know the rest of the deal. Like, there's I would have to imagine more than just Laine for like a pick, right? I would imagine it's a little more complicated than that, and we don't have the complete details, so we can't react to all of it. But I just genuinely hope that Laine finds a home in Montreal. That's really the end all be all for this. I mean, hopefully, Columbus gets whatever they want and Montreal gets whatever they want. But at the end of the day, I just want this trade to get Patrick Laine to be home where he is, find himself a good area to, I don't want him to rent, right? I want him to buy a house and stay there. I want him to have a long-term career with Montreal and have this work out, because by all accounts, when, like you said, when you're 26 and you're one of the top picks of the draft, and now all of a sudden you're here. Like, I don't want to say he's like, because fallen's a strange way to put this, but after the early start to his career that he had in Winnipeg, you would not have pegged him to be here.
No.
So I just want Laine to find success in Montreal, for Montreal to support him, and for him to really find a place that he can call his own in Quebec.
All right, let's pivot back. We'll talk a little bit about broadcasting and we'll get out of here. The big thing, and it's not so much, the actual, it is the familiarity, it is the comfort, it is the feeling. It is going to be hard for anybody to generate the type of reaction Sam does, because Sam has instant credibility because he's done it for so long.
Yeah.
You watch the games night in, night out, you listen to the broadcast, you understand just how much it matters to him. And I think the way you should understand it is, we are 30 going on 30 years since the Rangers' last Stanley Cup. And Sam genuinely feels bad for saying this one will last a lifetime 30 years ago, because he genuinely feels, damn, I really cursed the team. They waited 54 years to win their first Stanley Cup. And he's like, damn, the best call in the history of my broadcasting career. I kind of wish I didn't say it, because now people think I cursed the team. It's really, it is hard to imagine anybody having that warmth, that congeniality. I feel like everybody who has gone to MSG, who's been there early, has had Sam walk by them and say hello, unprompted. Yeah. Sam just always says, hi, hello, how are you? Because he's a nice person, because he genuinely just wants everybody to enjoy the game as much as he does. And that's the end goal here. When you have people who get it on that fundamental level, It makes everybody feel like they matter. And that's what you want. You know, sports are about community. They are about institutions. They are about shared experiences. And now you're looking at the unknown of, well, who's going to replace this person that has been a presence in my life, maybe my entire life, in my case, most of my life. But it is really just bizarre to think about. You know, what is that going to sound like? Am I going to want to hear what that sounds like?
Well, first of all, we don't have a choice. But second of all, we kind of have heard that over the course of the last couple of years when Sam has taken off for a little bit. And it's been John Giannone, it's been Kenny Albert, it's been, somebody else. We have seen, we've heard bits and pieces of it, but obviously Sam has never missed an entire season, since he's been doing this. So it's going to be different. I think, first of all, Sam is one of the nicest people in media.
Yes.
Period. Such a nice guy. Will always give you the time of day. Will always, he's been on with us a few times. Always willing to talk hockey. Such just a genuine person, and missing it's a power play goal, or is going to be really disappointing. And I hope that whoever the Rangers hire, I would have to imagine it's going to be somebody on the younger side because they want to rebuild that long-term plan like they had with Sam, who did it for 40 years. I would have to imagine they bring somebody in that I don't know if they're going to bring in somebody brand new or whatever, but I would think the blueprint to their broadcasting booth is going to stay the same, where let's have a voice and we're going to keep that voice for as long as, one, they sound good, hopefully they sound good, but two, as long as they are able to do it. Like
okay.
Sam's been doing it for so long.
The details are out.
Okay.
It's Laine in a second for Jordan Harris, the defenseman prospect.
Wow.
It's solid.
Yeah.
I like Jordan Harris. He's one of the 12 defensive prospects the Canadiens have. The Blue Jackets very clearly have been investing a lot in their defense over the last few years. Severson, Provorov. They've drafted a couple guys, but I get it. It makes sense. Columbus wanted a clean break, and to get a solid prospect in return, pretty good business.
It's a 2026 second round pick as well. For Harris. I like we talked about. I think this is a really great fit for Laine. I think the return is good for Columbus. They still need defensive help. There are a lot of their really good prospects or forwards like Marchenko, who's been really solid, underappreciated in Columbus. I know because Columbus is bad, so no one really watches them, but real Marchenko is a real deal in Columbus. And
you got him, you got Fantilli, you got Sillinger, you got Ken Johnston. They have drafted a lot of guys over the last few years.
And a lot of them look really good and probably will look really good coming up this season. Now, will that ultimately matter in their standings points? I don't know. I don't think they'll be a playoff team, but with Jordan Harris now on the blue line, they're going to be more fundamentally solid. You're getting instead of having 17 young forwards and a bunch of defensemen that can't really play all that well besides Werenski, now you're getting Jordan Harris, who's going to make your blue line deeper. So I think this trade is great for everyone. This is one of those rare win-win situations all around.
Yeah.
This is great for everybody.
Yeah. Harris will get an opportunity to play as opposed to being in contention with eight other defense. It
might be a Harris-Werenski pairing.
Yeah.
If Columbus, really believes in this guy, which by all accounts they do, if they traded Patrick Laine and they get him, this could be a Harris-Werenski top tier pairing in Columbus, and that has all the makings of it being a really good shutdown pair.
In theory, yeah. It's just a matter of it needs some run. That's been the issue in Montreal is they have a lot of guys. Their AHL affiliate has been very good the last few years because they've drafted so many guys who have played there. And last thing I wanted to touch on before we get out of here, with the state of where the national broadcasts are.
No retention on the deal, by the way.
I did see that. Laine is kind of expensive, but it makes sense. This is a clean break. That way everybody's clean. With the state of the national broadcast the way they are, I feel like anytime I have the privilege of watching the Sportsnet feed on ESPN+, I'm just blown away by how much better the broadcast is from a presentation standpoint. The camera quality is just better. You know, you can see the difference, and this is going to sound extremely nerdy, but you can see the difference between 4K and 1080p. You can. Sportsnet broadcasts hockey in 4K.
Absolutely.
ESPN does in 1080. ABC games are in 4K, but not every ESPN Plus stream is in 4K. I know that's very minutia details, but it does matter when you watch as much hockey as we do. Number two, I understand ESPN did not want to dedicate money to bringing in outside broadcasters, and that's why they have co-opted broadcasters from their portfolio of guys who do football, who do basketball. You need a serious play-by-play voice, ESPN. Sean McDonough, I genuinely like calling college football. Him and Todd Blackledge, the 3:30 kick on Saturdays, they're a great pair. They have chemistry. They've worked together for a long time. Sean McDonough and Ray Ferraro do not talk to each other. They both talk taking turns. There is no cohesion, and that's something you can't fake. It's something you were just alluding to in regards to Sam and whoever they replace him with and a partner. You want to bring two guys in together who can build off of each other and work. Whereas ESPN, it feels like an arranged marriage. And then there are the games where they have somebody between the benches, where it's Leah Hextall or it's not Katie Nolan. Why am I drawing a blank? Emily Kaplan, Emily Kaplan, who just randomly chimes in, but they don't really do a good job of incorporating her into the broadcast. And it just feels very sterile and very inauthentic. Whereas
it's a very here's Emily with more.
Yes.
With like, yeah, you can do that, but there's much better ways of going about bringing in analysts as opposed to here's a throw, here's this person with more.
It's very frustrating because when you watch a Sportsnet broadcast, down to the minute, the science, they do the 6:52, they do the tease to the reporter between the benches right before the game's going to start. They come back to Ron McClain in the studio, who throws it to the broadcast team, who does their hit in the booth. They go to commercial, puck drop, and it is 8 minutes. It is precise. Whereas where we're at here, ESPN, 7:05, puck drops at 7:35 because we have to do 15 minutes of PK Subban and Mark Messier riffing. It is incomprehensible. It feels like you're watching a different broadcast when you watch a different sport when you watch what ESPN does. TNT, as you alluded to, Brendan Burke's phenomenal. I think Brendan Burke is probably the best national play-by-play guy we have down here in the States. It's either him or John Forsland. Yeah, it's him or John Forsland. Those are my two favorite guys down here in the States. I will throw out, I do still love Gord Miller. I miss him and Ray Ferraro.
I love Gord.
I miss him and Ray Ferraro on the broadcasts. Gord and Ray Ferraro calling the Sharks comeback against the Golden Knights in 2019.
Yeah.
Levitating.
So
Gord Miller was actually levitating in that booth how good the calls were that night. And that is what a broadcast does. It enhances the viewing experience and it capitalizes on those emotions. You know, the Sam calls that really stick in my brain from the last few years, they're not always the biggest of moments. It is giving that moment an opportunity. The one that sticks out to me is the Zibanejad goal in overtime for 5 goals in that game against Washington.
5 goals.
Yeah.
Do you believe it?
And the thing that good broadcasters do, they let the moment breathe. And Sam makes his call, and that's it. All you hear is crowd noise for a good 20, 30 seconds, because that's what experience teaches you. The crowd tells the story. You need to kind of fill in the blanks, color in the details. And sometimes you can't do a better job than a crowd going batshit insane, because you can't. Words can't describe what that feeling is. I think about the goal that Ryan Callahan scores in 2013 to put them in the playoffs. Sam lost his goddamn mind. That shot comes in from the top of the left circle, and Sam doesn't think that shot's going in. And it inexplicably goes in past Cam Ward, and Sam just screams, their Rangers win, they're in the playoffs, and lets the moment breathe. You're gonna miss that because these new guys, man, they don't shut up. They don't. I understand.
They didn't go to the SI Newhouse broadcast school at Syracuse University. I'll tell you that.
You think about it's
obvious
really
plug, but yeah.
It's really weird to think about because that's the difference for me between a good and a great broadcaster is knowing when to let the moment breathe. Everybody started turning on Tony Romo the minute he turned it into open mic night. At a certain point, you need to let it breathe. And I think Sam and Joe, they have their faults. Every broadcaster is human. Sure. But they do a really good job of making you feel like you are in the conversation. You know what you're going to get every single night. There is a reason you and I can copy pasta together a Sam and Joe tweet about something that will be said on the broadcast in November.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting offseason for Jacob Trouba, Joe. We talked to him. He's very excited to still be here, and we're looking forward to a great season. That will be said at some point during the preseason. Oh, Sam, what do you think about Zach Jones? Well, we know he's a little bit on the small side, but Phil Housley was telling us he thinks Zach's ready to really break out and stick at the NHL level this year. It's not hard to do because that's how good these guys are at
the
this.
thing about these guys, and every broadcast wants to replicate this, it's really difficult to do, but you know it when you've done it successfully. They bring warmth.
Yes.
When you turn on your favorite team's game and you see your two broadcasters on the TV, let's say puck drop is at 7:08, at 7:00, you turn on the game and you see Sam and Joe on the call. Oh, it's great. You got the smile on your face. Oh, you got the two guys. You know that the call is going to be great. You know, the conversations are going to be really good. Everything is going as it should be. And that's one of the difficulties with replacing somebody like that is you have to now replicate that warmth. And it takes a long time for you to gain trust in people's households. Yes, people will turn on the game because they want to watch their favorite team. But now that Sam is not going to be on the call starting from next season, it's up to whoever the new broadcaster will be to get back up to that level of respect and warmth that Sam has had throughout his 4 years. It's not going to be an overnight process. It's going to take a while. But as long as the Rangers and whoever they hire to replace him will be patient with it and really respect the art that this is. Broadcasting is an art, guys. Like, I don't, it's not easy to do. It's really difficult to do it at all. It's really difficult to do it well. It's a whole nother level to do broadcasting well and also have the warmth that Joe and Sam have had for so long. It's not easy. It is very, very hard. The number one thing for the Rangers and whoever they hire is, it's hard. It's going to take a while. Give it, just like Sam does with his calls, give it room to breathe.
Yeah.
And if you give it room to breathe, the time will come, and then people will accept you into their living rooms just like they are with Sam and Joe right now. And then, the Rangers fans will accept the new era of broadcasting. If you force it, it is not going to end well.
You will end up sounding like Sean McDonough, Ray Ferraro, and Emily Kaplan, who are all good individually, yes. But when you throw them together, it does not have that warmth. It does not have that sense of comfort. But that will do it for this week's edition of the Liberty Blue Pod. If you could be so kind, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please throw the show a 5-star review. If you are watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell, get a notification whenever new content goes live. Let us know what's your favorite Sam call. We'll talk to you guys next week.